think I got it covered. So imagine if we had a food system that actually produced wholesome food. Imagine if it produced food that, in a way, that restored the land. Imagine if we could eat every meal knowing these few simple things. What it is we're eating, where it came from, how it found its way to our table, and what it really cost. If that was the reality, then every meal would have potential to be a perfect meal. We would not need to go hunting for our connections to our food and the web of life that produces it. We can change the way we make and get our food so that it becomes food again, something that feeds our bodies and our souls. Imagine it, every meal would connect us to the joy of living and the wonder of nature. So what's wrong with our food is the question. So we'll start with what's the problem. If you go to a lot of places in the United States and you go into the supermarket, it looks like there's a lot of brands and choices on the shelves. But I'm sure a lot of you guys know that most of these brands and choices are really coming from about 8 companies. So 8 companies produce most of the food that we're eating. So that's, we have 280 million people in this country and we're getting food from 8 companies. And when 8 companies are making decisions about what food we're all eating, and a lot of times we're not even involved in those decision-making processes, the food is less than healthy for us, and most of the time it's about the bottom line, right? So we decided that food, just something that connects us to nature and the earth, is more important. Efficiency is more important than quality and this connection to nature. And so is one of the problems. And so what do you get with that? You get a lack of diversity in food. So when you create a manufacturing or marketing culture around food, what you get is a lack of diversity. And a perfect example of that is McDonald's and the potato. We have a lot of monocultures in our food system. And I don't know if you know this, but if you turn around and look out into the jungle there, what you'll see is biodiversity, right? Evolution, the earth likes diversity. If you go to the rainforest, it's the most biodiverse place in the world. And that's Mother Nature, who's been doing her chemistry and biology for millions of years, right? And there's all kinds of biodiversity, and they're meeting and coming up with new ways to make the environment better. And that's evolution. And when you get what's called monocultures, and people are basically, it's an agricultural practice of growing a single crop or plant species in a field at a time, or the same crop in the field year after year. Well, the earth wasn't made that way. And these plants, in this case the potato, wasn't designed that way. And so what happens is, and it's simple, it's not even that complicated, when you plant thousands upon thousands of acres of the same crop, after a while, what happens? What's the most obvious thing? Right, pests, right? After a while, pests figure out, it's not very hard to figure out because it's not changing, they can see it all the time, anytime they want to see it, there's thousands of acres to work with, they figure out how to get to this plant or this food product. And that's exactly what's happened with the potato. There's 1.1 million acres of land in the U.S. Are dedicated to growing potatoes. 23% of those are one potato, the russet Burbank. The reason the russet Burbank is the one they use is because that's what McDonald's uses to make its fries. And it likes it because it's a long potato, and there's a lot of other things that make it a good French fry. We dedicate 260,000 acres in the United States to one crop. And so what happens is, to get rid of these pesticides, the farmers have to spray so much pesticide in the field to get rid of the pests. And also, the potatoes can't have blemishes on them, because everybody wants a French fry that looks exactly the same everywhere in the world. And so they say that they spread so much pesticide on them that farmers won't venture out into their fields for 5 days after this spread. That's how toxic it is. And this is monocultures, and it's not just potatoes, it's a lot of other things in our food system. Monocultures are one of the most worst things about our food nowadays. And not to mention, if you're eating the same, biodiversity is important for your own diet too. And I'll talk about that a little more. So if you have a lack of diversity, you're going to have to spray a lot of chemicals, a lot of pesticides. If you have more diversity, you can allow a lot of things in nature to do the work that pesticides do. Okay? And you see that a lot in permaculture practices, even here at Kalani. I don't know, what is it that they plant around the...
Comfrey?
Comfrey. They plant a comfrey plant around other plants, and that's a natural pesticide. And just rotating crops so that pests don't understand what's going on, and you just like trick them a little bit. You know, and it's not that hard. It's better for the soil too. And then here, so is there another model? This is called the integrated polycultural farming model, and so you see that you have different types of crops on the land, a fishery, there's some cattle, and so instead of having a giant tract of land with all the same stuff on it, you have a little smaller farming model with different kinds of things, and these are rotated out. One of my favorite authors, his name's Michael Pollan, he wrote one of the most important food movement books. It's called Omnivore's Dilemma. His new book is called Cooked, and he's just an excellent writer. He comes from a place of evidence, and it comes from a place of looking in literature and history, and he's led one of the leaders of the food movement. He said, we got to change things. And he goes, so that's us, processed corn walking. Because corn is in everything. Like, how did corn get into a soda, a can of Coke? There's corn in that. There's corn in all our cattle a lot of the cattle that we eat and beef that we produce eats corn. Normally, cattle don't eat corn, right? They're all eating corn because it's cheap. And it's cheap because what happened was, somewhere along the line, Congress joined up with these small amount of companies and said, hey, let's make this more efficient. Let's go to the bottom line. What should we do? And they started giving subsidies, large subsidies to agribusiness, like soy producers, corn producers, cow producers, and chicken producers. And so what happened was a lot of corn was produced. It's used in our gasoline, it's used in our soft drinks, it's used to feed all our animals, and it's a monoculture. And it's not necessarily good for you. And you can see that here. And then they created this thing called high fructose corn syrup. I'm sure plenty of you guys, most of you guys probably don't use stuff with high fructose corn syrup. But what happened was, you see this red line, which started in, 1976. This is the advent of high fructose corn syrup. You've seen these maps. Oh, this is an obesity map. So obesity on this line, and then the year high fructose corn syrup came out. And then check this out, 1985, this is obesity rates in the United States, it's flu. And then you fast forward to 2008, you see that almost most of the map, especially the map in the south and to the east, except for Colorado, it's the only state that's. And that makes a lot of sense, like, well, out there with people. You see 1985 obesity rates to 2008. And that had a lot to do with high fructose corn syrup and just processed food. And high fructose corn syrup was put in everything. What happens is it metabolizes in your body really fast, and it just creates a high glycemic count, and your body just stores that as fat. And so the diabetes is the #1 public health issue in our country right now, especially among African Americans and minorities. And a lot of times that's because a lot of middle class people, middle income people have access to other types of food, a health food store. But people who are living in poverty in this country, a lot of them only have access to those foods that those 8 companies put out. There's a lot of people that are just eating that, plus fast food, and they're getting sick. And then another huge problem with our country and the way we produce food is the unethical treatment of animals. Anybody knows me knows that I'm not a vegan. I'm a farmer, I'm a fisherman. I love to eat meat, I love to cook meat. But I'm not okay with animals being treated unethically in the way they're being treated. And these are pen, and these are pigs, and the pigs that are here on the Kalani, I love these. I love the pigs. I walk by them, and I'm almost in awe of them. They're probably like one of my spirit animals. I just dig them. I think they're cool. And to think that some pigs are held in pens where they can't move, they can't turn around and move for a year and a half at a time. They're not moving around. That's unbelievable to think about because you see pigs running around. They like to run around. They like to move. They like to forage. And this is, we're producing them in overcrowded pens. And these are smart animals. Pigs are smart. They're not dumb. They are, conscious, smart beings, and they know what's going on. And this is not okay. This is factory farming. This is lots of animals in small places, and they're passing diseases around, and so you have to use a lot of antibiotics to prevent these diseases. I'll tell you what that's doing. So you see that high fructose corn syrup increase, then you see the number of factory farms being farms with animals of more than 2,000 animals. So it used to be 30% of our farms in 1992. Now in 2007, 90%, 95% of our farms our animals are raised in factory farms. In conditions that are not good for the animals, and they're not producing food that's good, that's healthy for us. Since the 1960s, family farms have all but disappeared, largely replaced by industrial agriculture. During the same time, government spent large sums on agricultural subsidies. So their government is having a hand in this. They're subsidizing. And I've talked to farmers and farm consultants, and a lot of them will tell you basically the farmer will plant or do whatever the market says. So if the government's going to pay me to produce corn and soy, that's what I'm going to do. So it's really not the farmer. It's up to us. It's up to the politicians, and it's up to us to decide what the farmer produces. And farming is not one of those real profitable. The family farm is not a real profitable venture. They're a small profit margin. They usually do it because they love it. They think they're doing something really great. And that's the lifestyle they want to lead, not because it's real profitable. And so it's really important for us to watch out for our farmers. Here's turkeys, and this is just an article, a picture from an article of turkeys being severely overcrowded in a pen where they can barely move around. And then the same thing happens to cattle in factory farms. And then this is just bad public health. I did 20 years in public health. Infectious disease was I think, for 12 years, well, longer than that. And I was telling you about antibiotics. Well, there's a lot of antibiotic-resistant infection. So antibiotics are a good thing. We need them. We need them in the last case scenario. We don't need to be using them so much that it's the same thing with the pests and monocultures. But the bacteria are seeing the antibiotic in the food supply. They're getting to know the antibiotic, and they're finding ways around it. Factory farming is playing a role in antibiotic-resistant infections, which are another huge public health issue. I mean, thousands of people are dying in hospitals from MRSA, from flesh-eating stuff, all bacteria that are finding their way around antibiotics because it's coming up through our food supply. Another problem with our food system is just like the simple aesthetics of the fact that in a lot of cases, there's no flavor in our food and our produce, and there's less nutrients. And why is this? I'll take the example of the tomato, so I grew up in New Jersey, and you might laugh. You might think New Jersey is like all industrial waste, and Jersey Turnpike goes through North Jersey, which is all factories. But it is also called the Garden State. And we have some of the best tomatoes in the United States on the planet. And so, I'm Italian too. And so the Italians are big on tomatoes, and we're big on tomatoes that have flavor. So when I was growing up, tomatoes had flavor. They were sweet and they were super juicy. And in my lifetime, I watched as I would go to the supermarket and I would pick up a tomato and I brought it home and I'd eat this, and it's like, didn't taste like anything, no flavor at all. And I was wondering what was going on, so I did the research on that. And I lived in Florida also, and I found out that a lot of our tomatoes come from Florida. And actually, tomatoes don't grow best in the tropics. I didn't realize that. But what they do is they pull the tomato off the vine before it's ripe. It's green still, because they want to transport it. And a nice ripe tomato is hard to transport because it's gonna break apart or be damaged. And so they pull it off the tree when it's green, and they transport it, and then they put it in a warehouse, and they'll use chemicals to make it ripen. And that's what you get. And that's why this tomato we get doesn't have any flavor and a lot less nutrients, because the best tomato is vine ripened on the vine. And that's how nature made it, that makes total sense. Supermarkets only care about 5 things: size, weight, uniformity, color, and shelf life. So we want the perfect tomato, we want it to be perfect color, but flavor is irrelevant. The grower doesn't get any money for a sweeter tomato. And that's kind of the goalpost we set up, and that's what the farmer's doing, everybody's okay with a tomato that doesn't taste very good and has less nutrients. And that's not okay. And so this is, I don't know if you can't see that very well, but when I went to the beach, when my mom would take us to the beach in New Jersey, which is where I learned how to surf, there's actually good waves in New Jersey. She would pick up tomato from my dad's garden, which was like this big, get the salt shaker, we'd go to the beach. This would be my snack. She'd be like, Mom, I go, Mom, I'm hungry. She'd give me the tomato and the salt shaker. I'd eat that thing, and it would drip all over me, and she'd be like, okay, go wash yourself off in the ocean. And that was a good memory for me. And I remember how good that tomato tasted. And that's why I put this picture in. This picture is actually from a food fight that they have in Spain called La Tomatina. And they celebrate by throwing a bunch of tomatoes around. 40,000 people, 40 tons of tomatoes. So that might sound like food waste.
Ah, no, não me meço.